All right, you guys, this is our last episode before the big test tomorrow, and we have brought in a very, very special guest. He is not dead. He just retired, but he's back, and he is the AP guru. This guy is, the best of the best. He taught me how to teach APUSH. His mark has just been left everywhere on our school's APUSH curriculum. So. Here he is, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Saxton.
Yay!
Clap for yourself.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
All right. No
okay.
clapping
All right.
for me. Well,
Mr.
thank you.
Saxton. Yeah,
Thank you for the
welcome.
great introduction. That was wonderful.
Welcome to the pod.
I love the pod. It's
You-
very nice.
You've never listened to our podcast.
I have not. I've never
I
listened
think
to
he
a
has.
podcast before.
I think he's listened to every one of our episodes secretly. He doesn't want to admit it, but I think
it's
deep
like
down-
a little secret thing of
Yeah.
listening to APUS podcasts.
All right, well, Mr. Saxton, it's the night before the test.
It
Can you
is.
please tell us about your expertise in APUSH, how long you've been teaching, your role at the read, what even is the read, all that kind of stuff.
Well, I've been teaching for I've been teaching APUS for over 20 years, and I started with a guy named Dr. Rob Good, and I took over a guy by the name of Eric Hahnspot. I've been teaching for that long, and I've been going to the AP Read. I do believe this will either be my 18th year or 19th year going to the AP Read.
Dang.
So
You're an
that's,
expert.
I don't think so, but I'll take your words for it.
You've read a lot of essays.
I have read a lot of essays. So the read is where everybody goes to score the essays. We don't grade them, we score them. So we're just giving you points for what we do for the essays. So there you have obviously 3 essays. You have the SAQs, which each will get 3 points apiece. You have the LEQ, which will get 6 points, and you have the DBQ, which gets 7 points. And that's the biggest part of your grade. So that's what we do. We sit down and read the essays.
What do you think is maybe the number one thing for students to think about when they're approaching each one of those essays?
So when we approach the essays, one of the most important things I think you can think of is to look at the question, and I call it diagramming the question, but just look at the question. Dates are very important if those dates are in there, and the question will guide you into way to set it up. So if you're doing a DBQ, you know it's going to be like an evaluate the extent kind of question. If you're doing an LEQ, it's going to be an analyze question. And then if you're doing an SAQ, they're going to be identify, describe, explain questions. So the best thing is to look at the question and look at the dates. I've seen many essays where they cut dates, they use weird dates, and they won't let you, like if they stop it, I'll give you an example, at 1849, and you decide to talk about the Compromise of 1850, that falls outside the time frame of the question, and thus that will not count against you, but it will not count for you. So if you use that for your main point in order to get the point for it, as your main, as your fact for it, that will not count, and then you will not end up getting the point. So
I'm really glad you brought up the difference between those questions because looking at all of the past AP prompts from the last few years, it seems like for the DBQ and the LEQ, they are switching between two ways of framing the question. And one is to what extent, and the other is evaluate the relative importance of
Yep.
pauses.
Mhm.
Could you go ahead and explain the difference between those two and how to set those up?
So when you look at evaluate the importance, what they're asking you to do is have an opinion to it. So I always like to look at evaluate questions by using buzzwords that help me kind of write a thesis statement that helps me evaluate. So I'm a big fan of the word although, because when I use the word although, I say it's this, although, so it gives me a concession. So it helps me weigh the evaluation part of it. And then, of course, to what extent is to what degree of this. So then that's not so much your opinion, you're just offering to what degree maybe social would have a play or political or something along those lines. So those are called directive terms, and it's really important. That's one of the things you have to look at because it kind of guides you in what you want to write your thesis statement for.
Yeah, and that's the type of essay where you're going to want to make a T chart. If it's a how much, if it's a to what extent, as you're
Could.
organizing your essay, if it's a change in continuity question on one side of the T chart, you're looking at changes, the other side you're looking at continuities and trying to figure out which one is going to be my main claim, my main argument, and which one is going to be more of my concession or my counterclaim.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of T-charts personally because I think when I do a T-chart,
Ouch.
ouch, a T-chart sets me up into almost like writing in 2 paragraphs. Like I'm limiting myself to a
Mr.
yes or a no. I'm more into what the question is trying to say. So it might give me multiple points. So if I would have example would be like an imperialism question, right? So I would be like, to what extent did the U.S. imperialism, something along those lines, and that was like it was an LEQ from I think 2 years ago was that question. And so what you do is, for me, I always tell the kids, break it up into national security, economic gain, moral ideology.
Well, now you're getting into the prompt of evaluate the relative importance,
I
right?
could, or evaluate the degree to which,
Right. So
things like that.
But I don't want to let this moment pass. To me,
Yeah.
it kind of sounded like the expert of all things APUSH, Mr. Saxon, just said that Miss Keltner might have been maybe teaching her students the wrong way to approach this. That's what I heard.
No, not wrong, just different.
What I heard. That's just what I heard.
I heard that too.
Why are we turning against each other the night before the test?
We're not. We're
We're
not.
on the no.
Right.
We're trying. You know what?
I am here for all of you.
We're bringing some levity.
I am
to the
here
situation because
you.
A little humor,
No, actually, a T-chart's a great way to do it.
Yeah,
there's just
ways.
there's just multiple ways.
But I think
that was
what we're,
great.
I think what we're getting
I
to
know.
here,
trying to bridge friendship, harmony.
you are more than likely to see this phrase on the writing portions of the test, evaluate the relative importance of the causes. And that's what you're talking about here, Mr. Saxon, with your imperialism question. There are multiple causes of why the U.S. imperialized.
100%.
One reason was for national security concerns. Another reason was for economic concerns. The third reason was for ideological concerns to spread our ideas, worldwide. So a question that asks you to rank the relative importance is asking you to rank those causes from most important to least important. And that's where you could go with, instead of 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs, one on national security,
Sure.
one on economics, one on ideology.
100%. I love it. Miss Keltner redeemed herself.
Wow.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Man, it was close. Woo.
So, all right, Mr. Saxton, what other tips do you have? It's the night before the test.
The biggest thing is I always say the night before the test, cramming is not the answer. Just sit back, get a good night's sleep. But the thing about the AP test, it is the histories or the marathon tests. They're a lot longer. So when you look at your other AP tests, they're, like a government or human geo or psychology, they're all 2 hours and 15 minutes. AP US history is a 3.5 hour test. You're in it for a long haul. And so you need to have that energy. That's why when you do get your essays, you can break them up any way you want. You don't have to do the DBQ first, and there is nobody keeping time for you. So you do have to kind of watch your time. You actually get an hour and 40 minutes to write 2 essays. So make sure you pay attention to your time. And I always say start with the DBQ first because it counts for more points. It's 25% of your test. And so you want to be fresher because you just came off a break. You want to be kind of more in the zone and then move to your LEQ, which is the last thing you will do for your test. So it's, get some rest behind, eat some good fruit. I know Mr. Hill likes bringing bananas in. So, munch on some bananas first.
You know what?
And,
Eat some good fruit.
Yeah.
eat some good fruit.
I love that.
Be ready
You know
to
what?
go.
Bumper
Carb
sticker.
load a little bit, maybe.
Carb load,
Bumper
carb
sticker
load.
material.
And, just be fresh and ready for the test and then, be here on time. And I look forward to seeing your march.
Yeah, we do a big march at our
Big
school.
march into the test. And I look forward to seeing that with all the Liberty hats and everything else. And just be excited and be ready and take everything you know. What I tell my kids this year is just, one of the biggest things when you write is 2 things. Number one, the creativity is not in your writing, it's in your thinking and the way you express it. So don't be creative in your writing. I just went over that the other day. We just did, the DBQ and hipping and, things like that. And I'm like, listen, I'm glad you talk about, other alternative words to say the word purpose, but I don't want alternative words. I want the word purpose. I want the word intended audience, historical context, and point of view. I want those words. When it comes to an outside evidence in your DBQ, say an example of an additional piece of evidence
Mhm.
is. And the more explicit you can be helps you because you don't know who's reading your test. It
Yeah.
could be a really smart person, and I know Mr. Garrison reads, and Miss Keltner reads, and Mr. Hill
I can't read.
doesn't really read.
I don't.
Yeah.
I
So
just can't read. And thanks for
that's
bringing that
I
up.
brought
Yeah,
that up.
But
And
a great teacher.
that's
a
great.
great teacher,
Yeah.
just can't read.
Great,
Oh, I can
great
talk.
I
guy.
just can't
Great
read.
teacher,
Yeah,
great guy.
I hear
Great
you love
guy.
discussion.
Great guy.
Big on discussions. I hear.
Big, huge.
Are you yawning, Garrison?
No.
Oh, it looked like you were
Um,
almost about to yawn.
I was
the
about
deal
to
is-
interject.
Oh, okay.
But the deal is, I like to call it be very explicit in what you say. So the creativity is not in the way you write it. It's a rubric writing. So, think about that rubric. That's the one thing I would memorize over the facts is the rubric.
Yeah.
Contextualization, thesis, start going through those rubrics like you know it by heart. And that is almost more important than knowing your presidents, is knowing the rubric. So,
Yeah,
You
our
know.
students are mad they had to take a president's test.
oh, I know.
I
You're gonna
think
hear that
I
and go,
I think
"What?"
as a reader too, we'll both be in Kansas City, and
We will
it
be.
is so helpful, students, when you use the language of the rubrics. So just like Mr. Saxton was saying, be so explicit in what you're saying. Use the historical context of this document was. The purpose of this document was. Do not use synonyms for those words
No.
because it just, we're reading so many essays every day for 7 days straight, and it's just so much better if you make it obvious.
Yeah, as a former reader myself,
Yeah.
before I decided I wanted to hold on to what remained of my soul,
Yes.
uh,
I
I
understand that.
I always was more favorable to those tests that made it easy on me
Yeah.
to find the points.
You have
Yeah.
to. I mean, those are the best. And the other thing is, so what stops you from writing in an outline format versus a paragraph format? And the one thing I always say, what makes it the easiest for you is when you look at, like, let's say a document, or you look at an outside piece of evidence in an LEQ. So when you talk about that, you like to state it, you explain it, and then you have to tell me why it's important. And the way you tell me why it's important is to have a good topic sentence. So I always like a very good topic sentence for each paragraph, because then whatever fact I have can pull back to that topic sentence, which is thus one part of your thesis. And then make sure you end with a thesis, because according to the rubric, a thesis can be at the beginning or the end. So I've seen a lot of essays where the kid's thesis at the very beginning is horrible. And then the first thing I do is when I read an essay and I don't see a thesis statement that's good, I flip to the very, very end and I read the last statement. And we don't need a conclusion. We just need a restatement of the thesis. And I reread I read their thesis statement if they have one at the end. And I've seen so many essays where that thesis statement is awesome at the end. And the College Board allows you to get the point at the beginning or the end of the essay.
They kind of find it as they go along.
That's right. They find themselves as they go along. So make sure you restate your thesis statement. That's the last thing you should do on your LEQ and DBQ.
Good. We've talked a lot about writing. I'd like to talk about multiple choice for a second, because that's going to be the first thing that they see. So you guys will do 55 multiple choice questions in 55 minutes, and then you'll go straight onto your SAQs, then you'll get a break, and then that's when you get the DBQ and the LEQ. So what tips do you have for them on the multiple choice?
What I tell all the kids for multiple choice, because they're stimulus based, make sure you read the questions first before you read the passage, because a lot of times you can answer the question before you even need to bother reading the passage. You know it. And then the second thing is practice. Just like playing sports or instruments or whatever, the more you practice your multiple choice, the better you will get. So doing the prep books, I know your teachers are fabulous, mostly fabulous, and they give you a lot of multiple choice practice. They've been giving you quizzes all along, and it's those type of things that reinforce doing multiple choice over and over and over again, and that really helps you. So, practice. That's the one thing I always tell them. And when it gets to review, do 5 a night, or
Yeah.
do something like that, 2 sets a night. How does that take you? 6 minutes? Technically, if you did 2 sets a night, and that's all yet I'm asking. So doing that means huge. It pays dividends for practicing, but definitely read the question before you read the passage.
Yeah, and mark answers off that are incorrect.
yes.
Use those tools on the Blue Book app.
That's right.
And then you can really narrow it down and hone in on language and the differences between some of the answer choices.
Yeah, I find that almost always you can get it down to two answers.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, yeah.
And then from there, if you got no clue, it's a coin toss.
Yeah.
So the odds are with you if you can just start eliminating.
To start, and it's only 4 answers now, so
Yeah.
you can, get 25% shot. So take
Yeah.
it, make it 75 or 50%, if you're down
Yeah.
to 2 or whatever.
I always often
I'm bad at
say that math.
I was told there would be no math.
I
don't do
know.
math.
You know,
do math.
the other thing I run into is when we do practice multiple choice in class, or we're going back through answers, and kids are like, "Mr. Hill, I got it down between these two, and why isn't this one correct?" And to that, I will oftentimes say, because I'll read through it and I'll say, you know what? There is an element of truth to this one. The other one is a better answer. And then they get really frustrated with that.
Sorry.
And I tell them, I said, look, you're not competing against the College Board. You're competing against everyone else that's taking that class or taking the test. So it's a difficult question for everybody.
Right.
And that kind of, in an attempt to kind of assuage their concerns about this is unfair. Well, guess what? It's unfair for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just a hard question. So everybody's
I
got a
was told
question.
there would be no ACT words. Assuage is an ACT word.
Yeah.
Please stop
Word of
that.
the episode.
That was the
Word
sound
the
of
episode.
me
Wow.
hitting Mr. Saxon.
Another thing for your multiple choices, I always tell them, be careful of absolutes. Absolutes are usually wrong. So it's like if it's like I don't know, like a social question and it says all Americans or something, or it helped all people. Well, probably not the right answer, and it could often be perceived as the right answer, but
Perceived.
that's an ACT word.
Vocab word? Okay.
That's just a vocab word. And so we have that. So that would be a
Okay.
good thing to do.
Great. Well, any last questions?
No, I just think we should wish all the test takers out there.
Oh yeah,
good luck.
great. Yeah,
Yes.
It's
have a
going to
great
go
time.
well.
Yeah, you're going to do great.
If
Just
you've been listening to this podcast, you're way ahead of
Oh my
all these
goodness, you
other
are so far
students.
ahead.
please.
I'm going to be sharing this with my visitation students,
Oh
so
my
I
gosh,
can't
yeah.
wait to get the. What do you have? Like a
We're
link?
on
Link?
Yeah, we're on Spotify,
What?
Apple Music,
YouTube.
and YouTube.
Oh my goodness, this is huge.
And you can, of
Huge.
course, also follow us on Instagram at APUSH for All.
Insta?
Insta.
Yeah.
Okay. What about a TikTok?
We haven't gotten there yet.
I wouldn't waste our time. It'll be
Well, one day
Obsolete.
maybe we'll do
obsolete.
TikTok, but we're just trying to keep it slow.
Okay.
So, Mr. Saxton, thank you so much for
Oh,
being
I had
here.
a great time. Thank you so much.
It means the world to us. Everybody, great luck on your test tomorrow.
good
Go to
luck.
bed early tonight. Until next time, keep learning from yesterday to make sense of today.
Ooh.